Hi, Jenny. Thank you for coming on my show, my first draft friend. Now I want to call you my first cast friend, my first podcast friend. I'm so happy to have you here. Will you take a moment to introduce yourself to the listeners and share how we know each other?
Yes, absolutely. It is such an honor to be here. I'm so excited. This feels really big for both of us. So, my name is Jenny Bridgman, and I am a wife and a mother of three boys. I am a writer. I am a woman in recovery. That is how Heather and I have met. Almost 3 years ago, we met in a Writing for Your Recovery class and instantly connected and have just stayed in touch and have grown alongside each other and experienced life. And we always have so many things to talk about, as I'm sure we will today. But
Mhm.
you are just such a bright light in my life, and I'm so happy to be here to talk about all the things.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for being here. So you immediately impressed me because yeah, we were in like a writing for recovery course and if you're listening to this and not watching it, you don't see that Jenny is absolutely beautiful blonde. I call you behind your back, I call you Sandra D from Greece. And I think you're both versions of Sandra D. The nice and the naughty both. But you then took the initiative to gather some of us writers. And I was like, that is so brave because we were all shaking in our boots to be in this class, to share our writing, to be vulnerable. We're women in recovery. We all have anxiety, right? And you were so brave to do that. So I was like immediately drawn to your braveness. Also, I could see you like sitting up straight, trying to do the right thing. And I was like, oh, she's a perfectionist like me too. I was like, I see myself in her. And then I think because we bared our soul with our writing, which is so vulnerable for you, for me, for probably everyone, that the connection was authentic from the beginning. And then, yeah, our individual, we started emailing and texting and connecting. And then we've actually spent time together. We've traveled together. We've had these deep, heavy conversations. We've had real life time together. And you've become one of the most important people and best friends that I could have in recovery. Friendships change. So you've been a beautiful blessing and light in my life. So
Well,
thank you so
thank you
much.
for that. Thank you for that. I think it's important we do add that the Writing for Your Recovery class that we met in was led by the incredible Ann Dowsett Johnston. And we have her to thank so much for putting this group together. And I will say too that part of our immediate and quick bonding was because I do find that writing is double vulnerable. You're not just sharing parts of your story, many of which are quite dark and quite heavy and perhaps unprocessed. And also, you're sharing your craft. And so, for people that are perfectionists or have this fear of judgment or whatnot, it's especially vulnerable. And the fact that we kept shaking and showing up and letting each other know just how vulnerable we were and cheering each other on was really a beautiful thing. So grateful for that. That really was a life-changing decision that we both said yes to that class.
Yeah, we're still connected with the others and that was in our little cohort too. And all just begging for Anne's approval and the right of our writing.
Always.
Yeah, the queen for sure. The other thing is we call each other, which is pretty cute, first draft friend. And
Mhm.
what that means, what that has come to mean for us is we're going to show up as we are and we're going to strip down some of our perfection and we're going to let ourselves be. And that's been a really nice exhale for us to, in sharing our writing, our unprocessed, unfinished, imperfect writing, we've been able to help each other. In fact, you recently edited an article of mine that was published in After Magazine, and it wouldn't have been the same article without you. So I thank you. And it's hard to share our warts. It's hard to share our ugliness, right? Like, especially as drinkers, we wore a mask of alcohol and achievement and perfection and being good at so much. So to share things that are in process are still fragile or vulnerable with somebody is a gift. And you've been that for me.
Thank you. Yes, same for me.
Let's talk about it. Let's talk about the thing beneath the thing, because in deciding to do this podcast together and me asking if you would be a first guest and you not having done this before saying, okay, yes, let's hold hands and jump together off the dock into the water. And there was many things that we could discuss, right? Like being writers, being in recovery, there being wives, being mothers, being everything you said. There's plenty of things that we could talk about. But the thing that we settled on, which was really led by you, Jenny, something that you've been exploring that you've wanted to talk about, like brought me to my knees with gratitude that you were immediately ready to go deep and get into it. And I guess that's body image would be like the topic, but I would say coming home to yourself would
Mhm.
really be what we're going to talk about. And that's been the thing beneath the thing,
Yeah.
especially for you and your recovery journey. So, when did you start living outside of yourself?
Yeah. Yeah. Body stuff. The more we've been kind of brainstorming, you and I, and talking about it, I realized just how big this topic is and how important it is, not just to me, but I think so many women.
Mhm.
As we've mentioned, we met in a writing for your recovery class. So I think it goes without saying that I'm in recovery. Not to spend too much time on that. That's a whole conversation in itself. But I was one of those drinkers that it was a um, it was a problem for many decades. And I had my first drink at 14 and just fell in love with drinking. It was, as for many people, it was a party and then a priority and then a problem. And for a couple years, I'm approaching 4 years of sobriety now. And for a couple years, when I told my story, I said that I'm one of those lucky ones that's had to get sober twice. And what I see now is the first time I quit drinking way back in 2007, I it was mainly just quitting drinking. I never fully got the awareness or the acceptance. There was very little healing that happened. I did manage to quit drinking, and all these wonderful things happened in my life. I got married, I had children. I was a rock for my husband as he became paralyzed in a motorbike accident less than a year after we were married, and these things happened, but I attributed it all to love and marriage and motherhood, never quite putting it
Mm,
together that part of these things were happening because I had been sober. I didn't want to be sober. And there's a huge difference between not drinking and owning your story and fully accepting. So the drinking came back as it does, and it was far worse and very scary. And I was blessed with the gift of desperation. And my last drink was August 26th, 2020.
okay.
And I will say in the near 4 years since then, it's just been a constant self-discovery and excavation of sorts and uncovering the thing beneath the thing.
Mhm.
And what I have come to see about my story is that there was this body stuff going on that predated even the drinking, and that it was big and that it would take some time to start looking at it and being able to work through it. So this is a big conversation. It's really, I think, beautiful the direction it's heading. And I do want to say candidly that I'm in it. Like I'm coming to you live from the trench of this is where I'm at right now in my recovery. And it's not easy work, but I have come to the realization that I have been at war with my body for most of my life.
Mm,
And I feel like each day now is a chance for healing and embodiment and just kind of a living amends with myself.
mm,
And I love being 46 years old. I'm in middle age. I'm in it in so many ways, and just so grateful that I've had this chance to live life differently, look at life differently, and just be kinder to myself. And so that's kind of where our conversations have been going lately. And
mm.
I can't think of anyone else I'd rather chat about all this stuff with.
Wow, I love it. So thank you for your openness and thank you for talking to us in process. And let me assure you, you are not alone. I mean, that is why we're having this conversation because there's other women out there that are feeling very alone in their war within, with their body too. And there is another way. There's growth, there's recovery, there's healing, and you're learning how to do that. So you're a wise leader for that. Now, the first time you quit drinking, what was the impetus for that? If you know, and I love how you said a party, a priority, and then a problem. I have not heard that before. And I'm like, if that's yours, trademark it.
So, I can honestly say that starting way back in hindsight, I can say this,
Yeah.
that I lost my freedom almost immediately. And I was a goner. Alcohol provided for me the unbridled kind of personality that I want. I was an introvert and I was shy and I was all these things that I saw in society weren't the ideal, not at least in my mind. And it gave me freedom to express love, receive love, be, free spirited and these things. It had this sense of ease. And for someone who didn't feel comfortable in her skin for so long, it just was so welcome. And I very quickly became dependent. I forgot how to live in my skin without it. And by the time I got sober the first time at 29, there's a long history there. It's rather juicy. And I'm living with my now husband. And he basically said, it's the booze or we're done. And I was so in love and so terrified, and I couldn't imagine living without booze, but I couldn't imagine living without him. And somehow I did it. And I quit drinking. I went to treatment, but it still was this invisible scarlet letter of shame I wore secretly pinned to my chest. I didn't talk about it. I still tried to fit into my same friends group, and I didn't understand myself, let alone try to explain to them how to treat me. There was a lot of heartbreak and a lot of pain, in addition to a lot of love and marriage and having children and all these things. It was a very complicated time. And that was the impetus, though. It was, my family had been worried for years. I was a liability. I'd like to think
You're
that I
like,
was fun at
okay,
times, but it
I'll
was
quit drinking because they're making me quit drinking, basically.
right. And I
Yeah.
did not go down without a fight. There's, I went, but yeah, it was not linear, let's just say.
Yeah. And then alcohol immediately for you was self-abandonment. I mean, it literally was the thing that took you outside yourself. You were introverted. You were nervous to be in the social situations. You didn't feel that outgoing. I'm not sure if you wanted to be with these men in this way or that way. And if you took alcohol, you could ignore yourself. You could shush your inner intuition and you could silence your inner knowing to be who you thought you were supposed to be.
Yes. Yes, I have this metaphor that always comes into my mind of me longing to be this person, this free-spirited person who just lives in her body and goes in the moment and is open to the joy. And there's this image of us, like a group of people just at a dance, and people take their turn getting in the middle of the dance circle, and then it's someone else's turn, and we all take turns, and everyone lets their own light shine. And I've always longed to be that person who just didn't hold back and enjoyed and let their own freak flag fly, but I've just been so self-conscious my whole life that I would sit there and watch someone else go into the circle and say, okay, I'll go next. Okay, I'll go next. And then I'd start watching how they dance. And I say, oh, wait, well, I don't dance like that. Maybe I'll just wait a little longer. Oh, wait, maybe I'm a terrible dancer. Maybe I should just leave altogether. And then the song's over and there's your life going before your head. So I very much am someone who lives in my head, and our brains are wonderful. Our brains keep making sense of things. They keep us functioning. They protect us. They do all these wonderful things. But in my case, they also prevented me from living because I got so caught up in so many things. So that's the metaphor that always comes to mind for me is just being on the sidelines and not wanting to be. Now, when I drank, I got in the center of that circle, but it still was disembodied because that wasn't me. That wasn't me who got in the center there. And so any connections that I made were not based off two people showing up authentically as themselves. And
Mhm.
then later in life, I looked around and said, why am I so lonely? Why do I have so much pain? And it's
Mm.
because I hadn't let anyone in a way I didn't know better. And I do believe that disembodiment is also a brilliant strategy in many ways. I mean, there's many things that we can get into, but I didn't understand that for a long time. And I just really thought alcohol was the answer for me. And it was very hard to let go of.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So when you say that, this is what comes to mind for me. I I don't have to be the best dancer and I don't have to be like this person or that person. I want the loudest applause.
Mm.
That's the only thing that matters to me. Performance, achievement, affirmation, approval, right? Like I want everyone to clap the loudest for me.
Mhm.
So that's an Enneagram 3. But but anyways, so this is really interesting that alcohol was the mask for you, but it kept you from yourself and
Mhm.
it kept you from others. It kept you from having true connection with somebody else because you weren't yourself after alcohol. You were some diluted version. When you're talking about disembodiment, can you tell me what that means to you?
Yeah. So I know there's a lot of technical definitions or what experts may say. When I think of being disembodied, I think of myself, there's a sense of detachment. There's a
Mm,
sense of detachment from what's happening in the world and my experience of it. It's like I'm not fully allowing or acknowledging my senses and my experience. My body was not always a safe place to be. And so there was, whether I'm thinking about something that happened in the past, something that happened in the future, there's just this lack of integration in my whole experience. And the reason I can figure out when I am embodied is because I'm having glimpses of it now. It's such a part of, I know how to get there and I can feel the difference. It's something that's been hard for me to describe, but I honestly was walking around so unaware that I was disembodied. And the more that I'm thinking about it, the question is not so much, how did I become so disembodied over my life? And there are three key areas that I've pinpointed, three buckets that really say why I was so susceptible to this. But it became the question for me is how do we not become disembodied especially in our society as women nowadays, where so much of the messaging that we're told is the answer for relief or happiness or something is outside of us.
mm,
Look this way, eat this, wear this, drink this, you'll get the happiness, freedom, and joy and connection and things that you long for. And it's actually, an inherent need.
mm,
And then there's this messaging of if something's not right, go talk to someone about it, as if we
mm,
can, it's a
mm,
mental thing that we need to work out in our brains again once. And what I have found slowly and by being surrounded by very wise teachers such as yourself in recovery is that my healing needs both the top down and also the bottom up. I need to integrate the body with my spirituality, with my mind, all of it together to live inside of myself, to come home to me.
mm,
And
mhm,
there's no feeling like it. And I'm so glad I woke up to that. This is where my work is at this point in my life, because there was a big chance that this never would have happened.
mhm. Yeah, I mean, it feels like it could be a fuck the patriarchy conversation now because we aren't taught to pay attention to ourselves. I'm
Mhm.
thinking from a young age, go sit on Santa's lap, even if you don't want to, right? Go hug Uncle Joe, even if you don't want to. Give grandma a kiss, grandma a kiss goodbye. It doesn't matter if your body is saying, no, I don't want to do that. You need, don't be rude. Grandma gave you cookies. Go give her a kiss. We're not taught to listen to ourselves. And the world doesn't want women listening to themselves and feeling themselves and being at one with themselves and speaking up because that will really disrupt the apple cart, right?
Mhm.
And so that is a big, huge conversation. we are taught to ignore ourselves and we are taught to reach outside ourselves. And I love that. I love that even as a coach, where I say, like, get support, get help. It is, I always trust my client knows themselves best, would know themselves better than me. I would never give advice for them. How would I know what's best for them? I wouldn't, but I would know how to ask them the questions to enlighten themselves about themselves, right? We
Mhm.
all have the answers inside of us. The answers are not from your coach or your therapist. The questions are. The questions are hopefully. The wise
Mhm.
questions come from someone outside of you, but the answers are sitting with it, being one with yourself, feeling it. And I told you, I just had an experience where I was looking back on some Facebook pictures and remembering a time when I was in that situation and my whole body felt like throwing up. I felt sick to my stomach. I couldn't believe it. I was just wrought with nerves. Something was absolutely boiling inside of me. And I thought, that's how I felt when I was in that situation, but I was a drinker, so I never listened to it. Over and over and over again, I put myself in these situations and I didn't even pay attention to how I felt inside. I absolutely ignored it and drank more to deny it, to not feel what I was feeling because I thought I was supposed to fit in there. I thought that was supposed to be fun for me, right? And sobriety, thank God, has taught me to listen to myself. And so there is not that anymore. Now I do listen to myself, and it is confusing, and I don't have all the answers all the time. And I'm a woman in process also,
Mhm.
but I have awareness and I
I
can
feel that.
recognize.
Oh, I feel that so much. Yeah, there was, I believe it's a Liz Gilbert quote that our bodies are God's best messenger system.
Mhm,
And I wasn't paying attention either. But if I think back, I tune in now
mhm,
and I can really tell before I'm going to go to an event if it's the right thing for me to do. And there's
mhm,
a big difference between the fear of something because it's something so important to you and you want it to go well and you've
right.
got the appropriate kind of fear and
Mhm,
that you can bring along with you and accept. And then there's the noisy, your head is spinning in so many directions, you're not in the present moment,
mhm,
you're banging all over the place and it's just this warning sign just
mhm,
blaring, not right, not right, not right. And how many times I mistook the two
mhm,
and drank through it. Or what I would also do is shrink and not show up at all, even if it was something that was important to
mhm.
me or whatnot. So either way, that wasn't authentic living. That wasn't something that I would, with awareness and compassion for myself, I could make the other choice. And I didn't have the tools. I wasn't ready, for so long. Like, so we aren't taught these things. And
Right.
there becomes a certain age as I think naturally, as most kids, I don't even know if it's just I have three sons, and I think it's just something that we do naturally as humans. But you get to a certain point where you start looking outside yourself for the answers naturally, and it becomes, especially, in for females, how does this look versus
Mhm,
how does this feel? And
mhm,
that becomes our guide instead of our inner North Star, which says, no, this doesn't feel right. I have options here. We
for
forget that we
sure.
have options.
For sure. And our need to belong and fit in overrides any other need. So I
Every,
found it overrides our intuition, our inner knowing. I did plenty of things. Let's say in middle school, I was bullied and I also was a mean girl to other people. I've had
Mhm.
both sides of that, knowing full well I didn't want to be mean, but my survival was to fit in and be funny and be mean to that person today because and everyone's going to be mean to me tomorrow, you know? So
Yes.
yeah, definitely that need to
How did we
belong.
survive that? I think back
Oh,
at that and it's so common. Our experience
mhm.
is just so common, but it's not, wow. Yeah.
And as women, we're doing it to each other and we're ripping each other down and we're doing it still because we're
Mhm.
fighting for the limited seats at the table. So we're elbowing we're
Mhm.
still doing that because and that's where the comparison comes for you. Let's say of like that person's a better dancer or I shouldn't do it if I'm not going to be the best, right? or
Yes.
that person's better than me is because there's so few spots. We think there's only room for one. And we're pit against each other then as women competing for that one spot where it doesn't have to be that way
It's
either.
interesting because I see this situation as so complex. We're having the dialogue more and more about
Mhm.
what is anxiety and normalizing therapy and depression and all of these things. And yet we still live in the society where we're very visual.
Mhm.
And it's almost impossible to not compare yourself to the images we see left and right. And then we rank them. Here's a
Mhm.
funny story.
Hot or not, first of all.
I mean,
Smash or pass.
but so I was going through a box of my old things as we do, and oh boy, isn't that a roller coaster. But I found some journals, and one of mine is is a journal, and it wasn't just a journal of my, daily actions and thoughts and whatnot. It was an actual journal of what I wore, how I did my hair, and my ranking. And it was not based on how I felt wearing it. Did I feel confident? Did I feel good? Was it comfortable? No, it was what kind of attention I got. Did I get
Mhm.
compliments? Things like this. And I looked at this and it was just so sad and telling to me. I was like the original Facebook for myself, going off this. And then I'd refer back to it. 2 weeks later, I could wear that one because it scored so high. It's my sister and I joke about this in a sense, but it's funny, not funny.
Mhm.
It's very telling about how I was. So when I talk about people like me who come down with disordered eating and severe addiction and just a hole in your bucket when it comes to self-worth that you're just trying to fill with all these other things, which never
Mhm.
works. Um, it was all right there. I just, and I don't blame myself for it. I don't consider myself shallow. I consider myself not having the sense of security and looking for it in certain ways. And anyway, it was a very interesting to see that and in my little handwriting and just be met with compassion actually
Oh,
is
you want to reparent that
oh
little gal,
sure.
right? Tell
Yeah.
her she's an 11 out of 10 every fucking day. So it doesn't matter who noticed her or not. I want to talk about the three things. I want to get into those three things because I think they're really important. But first, I want to ask you about your husband because you slipped this in,
Mm,
and I feel like it's a big thing. You said he was in a motorcycle accident and
mhm.
he's paralyzed
Yes.
in your early marriage. Can you touch on that a little bit? Because I think that has a lot to do with
Oh my goodness. Thank you
body
for
image.
bringing
And
that up.
yeah, I feel like we need to rewind a little bit and
Thank
learn.
you. Yeah, that's a big part of our conversation today and just my life and all of this. So when my husband and I were newly married, he's a motocross guy. So he's got dirt bikes and it was a big part of his life. He was a great rider, riding since he was 8 years old. Um, I was 8 months pregnant and he went out for a spin and on one of usually I would accompany him to the track, but it was the day before my baby shower and I was out with my mom doing our things and he hit a jump wrong and fell and became a T10, which is a thoracic level of your spine paraplegic. And um, it's been it's been 14 years now that he's been in a wheelchair. And we are incredibly blessed that we had our first beautiful son 1 week after he came home from the hospital. Um, it was the most brutal and the most glorious time of my life.
Oh, talk about bodies. You, new mom, new
Mhm.
baby,
Yes. Oh,
new,
yes. We could talk
new
about that.
husband, wheelchair, home, you know?
Yeah. And, it's interesting. A lot of people say to me, oh my gosh, that must have been brutal. That must have been brutal to be pregnant at the exact same time this accident happened and your husband's paralyzed. And what people don't know is that this little boy saved my life. this little miracle on the way. I had every night I'd go home after visiting my husband all day at the hospital and had this baby, this life kicking inside of me, telling me, hang on, the
Mhm.
miracles are around the corner, the best is yet to come. He was a motivator for us day in and day out. And that's even before this beautiful
You were in
child
your body
arrived.
with him. You were
Mhm.
in your with him.
100%. And what
Mhm.
people also don't know is that had I not been pregnant at that time, who knows what my drinking would have. There is no way I would have stayed sober. You know, I was sober for those years when we got married and had our first few children, but it was being pregnant at that time was so, he saved me every
Mhm.
bit as much as I gave him life. He did the
Mhm.
same for me, and that is such an important part of our story.
Mhm.
But so what I also want to talk about is with regard to seeing someone, loving
Mhm.
someone, my soulmate, my life partner that I live with day in and day out, literally doesn't have use or feel of half his body.
Mhm.
He's riddled with horrific nerve pain, you know,
Mhm.
throughout the day. And here he's got atrophied legs. I mean, after so many years in a chair and despite all his um he's a rock star of a
Yeah.
human, and but all of the things that he does to stay fit and stay shape, and he's so independent and he's so hands-on with our kids and all the things, his body has changed dramatically. I mean, there's no question. And yet when I look at him, I don't see that. I see the man I love. I know that our vessel, our outside of us, doesn't define who we are.
Mhm.
He's this beautiful man, and the outside is not what I see. And yet I cannot have that same soft lens with myself for some
Mhm.
reason. That's where the interesting thing with the body issue comes in, is we are so hard on ourselves. I would never have the amount of destruction and punishment and this just the constant berating of my own body that goes on inside my head that I'm only now beginning to tell people about is, it's pretty astonishing. And it's just so interesting how it's only self-directed. I would never look at anyone else and have this type of thing. But I
Mhm.
feel that by finally accepting it and owning it and getting more comfortable and saying what's behind there, I can begin to release it. But
Mhm.
it is a really interesting thing that I live with. I have a
Mhm.
very unique perspective.
Mhm.
And I can tell you that there's actually been, there's so many wonderful gifts of loving someone and living with someone and raising children with someone who has limited mobility and things, because they have the opportunity to see someone rise before their eyes every single day, you know, from
Mhm.
his chair. It's just it's a gift that I can't even explain. And why are we not able to have that same soft lens when we look at ourselves and we're just still constantly at war with our own bodies?
Mhm. It really puts it in perspective.
Yeah.
You think you have a little lump or a bump, and your husband is sitting in a wheelchair, right? So tell me about that. There are three things, and I know the first one is internal. So
Yes.
share with me a little bit more
Well,
about what
we
that means
kind
to
of
you.
went about it in a roundabout way. So there's the internal and all the fears, the ways that the fear of abandonment, the fear of not belonging, all
If
the
you
things
don't
that
look right, if you don't look right,
Mhm,
you'll be kicked out of the tribe.
for sure.
If
Yeah,
you don't look right, somebody's not going to like you, love you, accept you. Mm. And
I'm
what
going
is
to
looking right?
control as much as possible so that I will be accepted. And fear of judgment, really diluting ourselves in a certain way. There's a lot of internal things, and it's all for me, it was fear based. I think some people, most of us have these to some degree. I'm an extremely sensitive, I'm a highly sensitive person, also introverted, and I have these things. And it's so interesting as I call myself like the unlikely addict, because I had this upbringing
Mhm.
that is really quite remarkably loving, and the kind of upbringing I wish everyone had. I had a mother who was never focused on how things looked or anything superficial. And she was, you know, a school teacher who just saw the best in everyone. And she was never worried about how she looked or her weight. She was the type of person who would always get in the pool with us and not worry about getting her hair wet. And just, she lived a life that was all about how things felt, and it just radiated within her. Despite all that, I had that example in front of me. I was someone who very, very readily took in all the messaging around me that I also need to look this certain way. And I think a big part of my issues, honestly, is when I became a tween. As I started developing, I started getting a lot of attention from my body.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly it was thrilling and scary and what's going on, but I got a lot of attention wherever I went. And it kind of became the only source of power that I'd ever known, became this strange thing. And it started to define my worth, and that you get into very dangerous territory. Then I get older and our bodies start changing and my weight will fluctuate.
Mm-hmm.
Then all of a sudden, this body that had been my ally becomes my enemy. And I go through breakups or something, for our friends start shifting. My heart is broken, whatever it is, I immediately say it must be the body. And then the body is to blame, and I turn on it, and that's when the punishment starts. And from my story that I not only suffer from, years of alcohol abuse, but I also have disordered eating issues that were also very undercover.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was 18, 19, I was introduced to these diet pills. They were called mini thins back in the day, in the late 90s. They were ephedrine, incredibly dangerous, bad things. And of course, I am in the disease of more. So drinking, whatever it was. So I started taking these things daily. And what happened was I started to lose weight. I had unlimited energy. I got a 4.0 one semester in college. I was focused. I was getting all these compliments. I had collarbones, I had cheekbones, I had all these things, and I was killing myself. I was smoking. I was restricting my calories to like 500 calories a day. You have no appetite. And then I would go exercise for hours and hours at the gym. And this is part of where the eating and the drinking come into play together, as it does, it turns out, for quite a few women. But I couldn't go to bed at night without having a couple beers, because my little heart was beating like a hummingbird in my chest, and I needed that to come down. And so we've got two things that are at play here, completely detaching me from my body. There is drinking, which, it's just a numbing agent. You're completely poisoning yourself and removing yourself from your body. And then you have an eating disorder where you are literally overriding any cues that the soft animal of you is giving you. You're restricting your food. You're pushing yourself to the limit. When your body says, no, stop, I need to rest, you keep going. You're doing all these things. And yet in my head, I thought, I'm finally getting there. Whatever there was, I was getting to this point where I was going to get that gold star and that happiness and all
And
these other
again, maybe on the
things.
outside you looked like you were.
Yeah.
Your collarbones were
Oh,
popping and
absolutely.
your GPA was rocking,
I
and
know.
you were slowly killing yourself from the
So what
inside.
I will say is that started around 18, 19, and by age 20, I had a stroke. I had a mini stroke. It's called a TIA. Thankfully, it was reversible damage. And they did discover through a series of tests, I had to take 6 months off college and move back home with my parents to have open heart surgery. They discovered that as a result of the stroke and trying to figure out how this possibly happened to a very fit young woman, that I had a pretty common congenital heart defect that they thought they better fix. It's called a PFO. It means that there was a hole between my left and right atria. It's there for every child before they're born because oxygen bypasses the lungs. And then as soon as we're born, that little flap shuts closed and we start using our lungs. Well, my little flap never completely closed. It's very common. 1 out of 8 people are walking around with it and don't know. But this for me required open heart surgery at Stanford. And I just remember you're 20 years old and you think you're invincible. And I was more embarrassed with people finding out than I was about maybe I might not wake up from this thing. It was just this
Mm.
really, really big thing that just said, I knew I was flawed. I knew something was secretly wrong with me. And this just is one more thing that proves it. And the sad thing about that is, I have just been so deeply loved my whole life. I've been deeply loved my parents. I have two siblings that are amazing. I had a boyfriend I was living with at the time. I was just all these things, and yet I didn't feel worthy of love. And I was so afraid of losing that control, losing that power, losing my body that I went back to the pills and the drinking and the smoking and the overexercise. I would say within, I don't know, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, something like that. And that is a part of my story that I have very rarely talked about because it's so big. There's so much apologizing I feel like I need to do. When you look at the totality of destruction that
Mhm.
we do to our bodies and still be right, and that's a big one for me. But
Mm.
I feel that I'm there now and that I get it.
Mm.
I get the why, and I just have so much compassion. And my body has been through amazing things and it's never stopped working for me. And, if not now, when?
Mm.
When am I going to accept it and honor it, even for allowing me to live and feel so many things, the difficult, the beautiful, all of it? If not
Mm.
now, when?
I love that. What a perfect time right now. And we can heal. We do heal and we do recover. So that's beautiful. Even from that, right? Even from the shame. That's so interesting that it was, am I going to live? Is everyone going to think about the story, right? Still outward focus, but you're tuning in now. You're tuning in to yourself and your body. So there's the internal thing, and then there's the society thing. Tell me about that. The like, what will everybody think? Because what will everybody think? And where does this come
Yeah.
from? And who's the ideal? As you're talking, I'm like, is there an ideal? Is there a person? Or when you said you almost got that gold star, like right before your stroke, you were probably almost at the mark, right? Almost there. What is that?
Oh, it's
Just
so funny, not funny.
4.0, super skinny. That's it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, well, this is very revealing, but I'm just going to be very honest, is that the way I drank, I just pushed the limits every time. I was always one of the last people standing, or not.
Girl, that's why we met in sobriety, just so you know.
When you look around and you say, where's everyone I came with? Or I'm the one that needed to go home first, because I started the party too early, whatever. I just so many, but the same thing with the food issues. And I mean, I never could quite, I was never able to make myself sick. I was never able to be bulimic, because I tried. That just
Mhm.
didn't happen for me. I was never able to just restrict my without the pills. I wasn't able to have the willpower. I thought this was another flaw of mine that I just couldn't. I just wanted food. I was
Mhm.
hungry, and then
Same
I
here.
would I would deny myself, and then binge, and then go over exercise. I mean, it was a whole
Yeah.
slew of things. The interesting thing about the eating was that anytime the drinking ramped up, the eating issues would kind of fade into the background. And so when I was pregnant, I, had three healthy, beautiful boys. But I will say that even when I was pregnant, I did not drink. And I became very focused on staying small though, when I was pregnant. And all three pregnancies, I kept a detailed spreadsheet of how many pounds I gained per week. And I have these spreadsheets saved on my hard drive, and I kept them very secretly. I forget what I even named them. But it was to the point where if I knew I had a weekly check-in with my prenatal doctor, I would even withhold having some water before going in because I was so focused on that number on the scale. And at the same time, I cared so much what I ate. I ate beautifully. I was cooking for myself these nutritious things that I otherwise normally wouldn't. It was the first time that I felt like my body was a temple. I was growing this beautiful life. I had a purpose. And I enjoyed food in a way that I didn't allow myself normally. And yet there was still this thing going on of I can't let myself get big. I'm pregnant and I still can't let myself get big. And I gained 19 pounds to the ounce with all three of my children, to the ounce, following this formula that I'd had. And I had three healthy, beautiful children. I was the one who suffered. I was the one who was malnourished and exhausted when it was time to, have, the fourth trimester is the hardest, right? And you're breastfeeding and doing all these things. But it was just interesting. I never correlated that when the drinking stopped, the eating went back up. And this is a very common thing. And as I said, I'm at the beginning of this exploration here. I know there's a lot to it. I know a lot of women have uncovered so much, and there's so much beautiful wisdom for me to learn and go there. But it was very much the case for me.
This
So
cycle is so familiar though, whether it's eating or drinking, the cycle of restriction and then binge and then berate yourself and hate yourself and beat yourself up and then do it again. But you know what? The cycle of hating yourself, the berating, the shame on you, that gets familiar. That starts to feel like home. That's what I feel like, that's even what we see unconsciously. Do the bad thing because we know we're bad and we hate ourselves anyways. So do the thing and then beat ourselves up because there we are home again where we should be. Shame on you. Like that becomes very
absolutely.
familiar. So that is food and that is alcohol and that is probably just about anything. I truly believe addiction is a human condition and it's not saved for just alcohol use disorder or specific like alcoholics or certain people.
Yeah.
But for us, the cycle of hatred is even that is the addiction. That pattern of self-hatred is, we're addicted to that. We don't know how to jump off that cycle either.
100%. I think that was the first piece of writing that you shared in our writing group back in 2021. And it was you waking up in the morning and talking about this berating and this self-hate and this disappointment in yourself. And you did it in such a raw, beautiful way. I love your writing. And it just got me. And I said, wow, she went there. And I think that's a big basis for our friendship right off the bat.
And Anne
I
said,
get this.
you don't have to use so many swear words.
You're speaking my language, and okay. You took the restrictor plate off the Red Dragon. You went there when I was still too afraid to. I was, you've got a number of years of sobriety beyond me, and I've always looked at you as such a source for me of where I want to go, and I really appreciate that about you. But I think it's saying it was what finally freed me from that. And it's interesting, even waking up today, for example, as nervous. I run nervous. My therapist says I idle high, which I appreciate. But I also felt so grateful and happy that I have a voice that I can use now. And I said to myself, okay, you've got some fear going on. How neat that you care so much about this today. I love where your intention is. And you know what, even if it goes poorly, and I've shared a few times where I don't think it went well as you're figuring out how to share. It's a really big deal to talk vulnerably about yourself. But I said, even if that happens, I have myself. And I never would have said that. I never, ever had my own back, And so it's not only do I have just total trust in you, and every time that we're together, it just feels like coming home. But I literally do know what it's like to catch glimpses of what it's like to come home to myself. And I've had these moments where it's almost like I apologize to myself for the abandonment for all the years. And I swore I would never try to talk about this because you can't possibly put into words the feeling that I've had, but I'm going to try. But it's just this sense of this automatic, there's nothing to forgive. You've always been forgiven. I got you.
Mhm.
I'll never abandon you again. I mean,
Mhm.
it's just this beautiful understanding. And the shame thing for me, I lived with shame. I took on shame that wasn't even mine.
Mhm.
I mean, I just lived with shame for so long. And a lot of it came out in the body, And
Mhm.
so I think the missing piece for me was feeling safe. And when
Mhm.
you start trusting yourself again and
Mhm.
knowing that you can trust your actions, you can trust your gut,
Mhm.
then you can trust yourself to start digging into the bigger pieces and reclaim them and reunite
Mhm.
and make those amends. And so it happens for me so much more on top of a mountain, just
Mhm.
me in my red laced hiking boots, than it
Mhm.
does, say, in talk therapy with someone. That's just the way that I am, or on my yoga mat, which one of my favorite yoga teachers refers to our mats as our magic carpets.
Mhm.
And oh, the places we fly, and um it's just really beautiful to
Mhm.
to finally get that sense of embodiment, and it's the spiritual and the mental and the physical coming together, and a piece that I don't think I've maybe ever known.
Mm. Mhm. How beautiful. So first of all, nerves about this, totally appropriate, right? And also the outcome doesn't matter so much. It was the act of doing. It was the act of putting yourself out there. You couldn't go wrong. You couldn't go wrong. This is practice of you talking about something that really matters. So it's already beautiful, no matter the outcome. Although obviously we've had a wonderful conversation and the outcome is wonderful. And you're going to have a whole slew of people following you now who are just going to fall in love with you the way I have. So the outcome doesn't matter so much as the process of doing, and you're teaching your body how to talk out loud, right? How to share stories and how to stay with yourself through it, no matter what, no matter the outcome, no matter the performance, right? Or the score or the ranking of your outfit and your hair today or whatever, however that looks for you or and so that's beautiful, and creating safety within yourself that you've got you no matter what. And you've said you were at war with yourself. You started as your own enemy, but you've got you. And when you know that, then you can start to explore these things. Then you can start to dig deeper and excavate, as you said, where some of this comes from, how you can heal it, go back in time and reprocess some of those things with new eyes. It's a very brave thing to do. And
So
I'm so
beautiful.
beautiful. Yeah.
I would also say, as you were so beautifully talking, it also, when you have trust in yourself, it also allows you the security to be open to giving and receiving love to other people. And when those people start coming into your life, I've met so many people in the past few years that it was said, I had no idea how much I needed you.
Mm.
And it's only by having that relationship with yourself first
Hmm.
bloom and just be so sturdy that you can say, oh wow. And it's interesting, I've always been drawn to very magnetic, wise, beautiful souls, and yet shied away from them because I said, oh
Mm.
no, I can't have them looking too closely at me. They will see right through all my shit. They will see that I am an imposter, or that I don't have much substance, or whatever it is. And now I just feel like there's this magnetic pull all throughout, and it's a global thing. I mean, I'm part of these groups. We have, when I first tried to get sober in 2007, I was 29. Tough time to get sober for anyone, but there wasn't this landscape. There wasn't a ditch the drink. There wasn't the Luckiest Club with Laura McCowan. There wasn't Ola Sober with Susan Christina. There wasn't any of these things. It would even be a few more years till Anne's book Drink came out. And there is such the modern recovery landscape is it's just so beautiful that it opens up to all these different modalities, and we can find one that really works for us and sticks. I mean, I have a very custom made recovery package going on. It's all mine, just as our journeys are the same. It's all mine. But in that, there are women all over the globe that maybe on paper, what do I have in common with this person? And yet
Mhm.
it's almost like a soul sister. You find
Mhm.
someone that you just relate with, and it's the most beautiful thing. It's such a gift of sobriety. It really, truly is.
Yeah, I love where modern sobriety is going. Also, to your point, I mean, for some people view AA, let's say, which felt like the only option, a
Mhm.
support group for a very long time. And a lot of women don't want to sit in a circle of men and call themselves powerless. They
Mhm.
feel like they've done that their whole life, right?
Yeah.
And so no knock on AA, but it's really beautiful that we get to create our own customized, curated healing and recovery toolkit for ourselves. And for you, I've heard your magic carpet yoga. I've heard the red string hiking boots as inspired by Cheryl Strayed on Wild. You and I are twinsies with our
We are
matching
twinsies.
ones. Um, atop of mountain therapy. I've heard sober support groups, recovery support groups. I've heard friendships and community, other surrounding yourself with other people in healing. Writing, I wanted to say, here's a name for your book. A rider and a writer. You
Oh,
and
I
your
like
husband.
it.
So if you want to trademark that, it's yours. It's fine. What else? What else would you, let's end with any resources or books. Like I'm thinking The Body Keeps Score was like a huge book for me. And I want to say The Body Keeps Score with trauma, addiction and things, but I've also recognized The Body Keeps Score in a really beautiful way. If you have felt safe with somebody, if somebody reminds you or an environment reminds you of safety and love and belonging, your body might also remember that in a new position. So
Oh, yes,
with
yes.
your embodiment practices now, what have I missed? What would you add?
Yeah, so I would just say that when we become more embodied as people, we have more access not just to the unprocessed trauma and the things that we had to disassociate from, whatever our brilliant strategies were for whatever reasons, but it's also, it lives right alongside all the joy and all of the emotions that are stored in there. I have found that I am so much more open to things that are new and otherwise would have been scary for me. Some of my biggest pleasures these days are horse riding, which I just started in my mid 40s, which has become a big source of joy and huge part of my life. It's every time I get on a horse and I am just in the moment, which is so hard for me with such a busy brained type of person. It's beautiful. I've started ballet. I just bought my first pink ballet slippers for the first time since I was a young child.
Um,
Um, I'm spending a lot of time with my aging parents, and my mother is suffering from a very progressive form of dementia. And so, as our roles are really switching right before my eyes, it's also such a beautiful gift to see. I'm taking her to do things like aqua aerobics, and you get to see, the demographics a little different than the usual fitness classes I go to. And I'm surrounded by these people who are just living life in this full way I just feel like I've been exposed so much lately to things that otherwise would have been far too fearful for me to experience. I will say that I lead every 2 weeks. Lead a caregiver support group call for people with paralysis. I don't consider myself a caregiver. My husband is very independent, but I do consider, just like addiction, spinal cord injury is very much a family injury. And so I'm very involved with that community, and keeping my finger on the pulse and staying in that community is very rewarding to be of service. It really fills something inside of me to give back something that I've learned over the past, so many years with my husband being in a wheelchair. And my husband and I are in couples counseling, and we love our therapy. I was someone who never, ever liked therapy. I think that's because I never actually told the truth in therapy. So,
it
so
sucks when you have to do
that's a
that
big,
part. Changes the
there's that.
game. Right.
But I
Well,
will
is your
say that
therapist going to give you an A+? I mean,
I have a wonderfully supportive husband who did quit drinking along with me. He didn't have the same problem I did, but he definitely drank. And your marriage change. Every relationship changes when you quit drinking, and it includes marriage. And so we have a wonderful therapist that we meet with. And I don't know, what else am I missing? I'd say we pretty much covered it.
Yeah, any books that you're reading,
Oh,
or
I would say
that
The
you
Body
listen
Keeps the
to?
Score. The
Yeah,
reason I say that is I resisted reading that for a number of years, knowing that there would be a lot there. It's one of those you
same.
keep hearing about.
Yeah,
Right?
me too. I just read it probably in the last year or so after knowing
Okay.
about it for a decade, right?
Yes,
And
yes. There
avoiding it
was,
specifically because even the title is that's a little much.
yeah, the title and then the font when you open it up. It's
It's immediate blackout.
But so I actually did a book study of The
Oh
Body
yeah.
Keeps the Score
Yes.
through TLC, which is the Luckiest Club. And so
Yes.
you
And
go
Jessica's
through,
my
you
friend.
chunk the chapters, go through, and then have a chance to share your reflections on it. And I would hear other people share what they got from it, and it would spark something in me. And it was kind of like, don't go there alone.
Yeah.
Not just because the content is very dense and it's scientific and it's whatever, but I think it's actually a must read. It's very powerful and illuminating
Yeah.
and empowering.
Mm-hmm.
There we do heal. And I don't know if I ever fully believed that as a human until I became one of them.
Mm-hmm. Here you are healing. Thank you, friend. I love you so much. My first draft friend. Thank you for sharing your heart and soul with us today, for getting vulnerable, for being honest. It's huge. It's sort of the opposite of what you've done in the past, trying to be somebody you're not. You just showed up
Oh,
authentically.
thank you for saying that. Thank you,
Now,
Heather.
where can everybody find you? Because they're going to want to follow you now. They're going to want to read your writing and be your best friend. And I'm gonna be jealous, but okay, where can they find you?
I would love to be connected to people. I have a website, and you can find me at jenniferbridgman.com. It's Jennifer Bridgman is Bridgman. There's no E. I feel the need to always say that. It was part of our wedding vows because everyone wants to put the E in there in Bridgman, but jenniferbridgman.com, and I would love to be in touch.
Thanks, Jenny.
Thanks, friend.